Hello again, everyone. I hope you are having a fantastic Tuesday morning. I am excited to be back with you again this morning to talk about classical homeschooling. Now, before we begin, I want to introduce myself again. My name is Brandy. I have been a stay at home mom and a homeschooler for 4 years. Prior to that, I was a special education teacher and a teacher trainer. So I helped teachers implement curriculum and changes to their classroom in an effective way to a variety of learners. Because of that, would love to use the skills that I learned with that to help all of you at home that are thinking, I want to start homeschooling. I have no idea how, or that are thinking, I have got to make changes to my homeschool, or this is not going to last. So, in the process of these videos that I am putting out and classes that I will begin to publish, I want you to know that there are a couple of ways that I can help you. I am not a curriculum coach. I am not a curriculum specialist. So, as I speak about homeschooling curriculum, I am only giving you some small snippets of information to help guide your research. But what I can do is no matter what method you think works best for your family, I can help you implement that method effectively for you and your children. I have helped people create daily schedules. I've helped people adjust their daily schedules to account for multiple children, multiple ages. This is one of the most difficult things for, this is one of the most difficult avenues of homeschooling is that we have a variety of ages at home. And I can also help you adapt and adjust the curriculum that you have for different pace. You might need to slow it down, speed it up, and for different learners. So these are the things I am able to do for you, even though right now I'm bringing just a small bit of information. Some upcoming classes that we do have that I'm going to be putting out soon. Today we're talking about classical education. Over the next week, we'll be looking at Charlotte Mason, Montessori, unit studies, and unschooling. After that, I plan to put out some information about how do I even get started. Okay, I know what might work best for my family, but what do I do now? And then look at how am I going to plan for this upcoming year or these upcoming 3 months as I dive into this journey, which it is really what it is, because it is a process and we make changes as we go and we figure out what works for us. So, okay, without further ado, let's get started talking about classical education. Now, classical education has a very clear and defined methodology behind it. And everything with this method of homeschooling stems from the development of the child's brain. So the classical method of homeschooling goes back to ancient methods of learning. Classical homeschoolers place their children in 3 stages of learning. Grammar. The grammar stage is the youngest. It focuses on memorizing facts. So we see children memorizing countries, continents, the states, the oceans, memorizing scientific facts. This is where they're learning to read. They're memorizing math facts. They then move into the dialectic stage, which is when we teach them to question and evaluate the facts that they have learned. And then the final stage, the oldest, is the rhetoric phase, and that would be teaching them to synthesize all this information and apply it to their lives. So, a big aspect of classical education, which is not similar to traditional, which we spoke about yesterday, is that it follows a chronological order. Traditional homeschoolers or public schools, schooling at home, tend to jump around to different topics and subjects based on that child's developmental level. Classical homeschooling starts at the beginning of history and goes through that time period. So as a young child, they're learning about British history, Greek history, mythology, and then moving into these more recent events as they get older. And another aspect of classical education is there is a huge focus on critical thinking and discussion. A key term you could research is Socratic dialogue. Texts, stories that they read, things that they learn. There is a big focus around discussing that, debating pros and cons. How would you do it? How would other people do it? What were the effects of these choices? So rather than testing and quizzes, you see more discussion. And Latin and Greek and foreign languages are also something that are added into classical education. So, looking at some schedules, how does a classical education look on a schedule? Now, I spoke yesterday about traditional homeschooling, that it was a very rigid, clear schedule. Classical education, this methodology is more flexible. So many of families with a variety of ages of children at home would like to use stuff like this as the future methodologies that I'll talk about have a bigger flexibility too. Okay, so we're going to look at some schedules. Here would be a sample schedule. Now, take notice it's a 4 to 5 hour day, a little shorter than what we talked about yesterday. So some of these very classical forms of schooling, copy work, okay? Copying to help them learn grammar, to help them learn handwriting. We often in classical education see memory work where they're memorizing things. So you will note that there is a lot more focus placed on reading and writing over your sciences, your social studies, your histories. Okay. So that is something to take note of if you're interested in this methodology. Another schedule that I was able to find, here's more of a block schedule. You can see that foreign language, Latin or Greek, often added in. Logic, is a big aspect, which with logic, you're that's that discussion portion that we see coming in. So you do still have the history and science, but these are some long subjects here, but you're not necessarily doing them every day. You definitely are hitting your reading and your math, your grammar every day. Your other subjects tend to take the back burner per se compared to those big ones. Pros and cons. Now, I want you to understand when I say the pros of this methodology, the cons of this methodology, I can't even call it negative. Every con or every downfall to a methodology can be corrected by you as you want. If classical education is what you want and there's one thing that you see as a negative, you can make that change and add that in to prevent that from being what stops you from using this overall concept of teaching. So let's look at some pros and cons. Okay, some benefits. Classical education has been around for a very long time. It is time tested. There is a lot of focus on the classical literature, okay, the great books, they refer to them as. So your children is reading Aesop, and as they get older, they're recognizing a lot of historical figures, Plato, they're reading Shakespeare, they understand, um, they will have a knowledge of these great historical figures from a very young age. What I see as one of the benefits is there is an emphasis on reading. Um, Reading text that might be a little bit above their reading level because you're reading classical literature, so you're not reading a lot of children's books that are not authentic, and it's hard to explain that, but some of the newer children's books that we see, like those little kids series that are chapter books that are cute and kids love, they're not going to place an emphasis on reading this type of literature. I see the biggest benefits is the emphasis on critical thinking. That has been a downfall that we've seen in public education for a long time. Students are memorizing only and not thinking critically, so this places an emphasis on that. You have more of a flexibility in ability level when you're purchasing curriculum with a classical mindset. You're able to kind of say, I'm gonna get that higher level math because they are capable of doing this. I'm going to redo this portion of reading because they're not catching on to the short vowel sounds. And a benefit and a something that you might need to consider is that this is a very rigorous curriculum. Children are expected to spend extreme amounts of time memorizing facts, and this works for some kids. It works great for some children. It doesn't work for others. So you need to consider the learning style of your particular child. Another downfall that I could see of this, or not a negative, but something that is a consideration for you, is the necessity of having a strong reading comprehension. If you have a struggling learner, if you have a learner maybe with some reading disabilities, this might be a difficult method to implement with them because that reading comprehension is so prevalent in this method, and um, people are going to have a hard time recognizing, or those students that might have disabilities or might struggle with comprehension are going to have a hard time following some of the texts that you're reading at the age that they're reading it. Would they follow and understand that text in the future? Maybe, but to implement some of these higher level texts at a young age might be difficult for them. Less focus on science and social studies, and definitely some more desk work involved in this method. Okay, so again, these are not negatives. These are things you need to consider based on how your child learns and how you teach and how your family is going to work together with all of this. Couple more things, couple more minutes, and I'll let you go. Common curriculum. Okay, these are probably some of the most common curriculum choices we see with classical educators. Classical Academic Press, I have used some of their material, their Latin materials. They are fantastic. Memoria Press, one of the most famous, I would say. Memoria Press, I have many friends who use this as well. And Veritas Press. I did mention that Veritas Press was also traditional. The reason why it can be both is because you can pull in different aspects of their curriculum. When you purchase these curriculums, you're not saying, I want first grade, I want second grade, I want third grade. You're choosing a level for reading, you're choosing a level for math, you're moving through that chronological order for history. Um, so Veritas Press can fall in both categories. And then probably what I have seen as one of the biggest things that have drawn people into classical curriculum is classical conversations. This is a co-op, it's a curriculum, it allows you to link up with other families following the same methodology. You meet together with them, your children engage in discussion with their peers. It's a fantastic resource for families that are choosing to homeschool in the classical style. So, how do you know if classical homeschooling is for you? You want something that's different than the traditional, than what they are putting out in schools, but you also want something that's time tested. You don't want to, once again, you don't want to experiment with your child's education. You want something you know works, but you don't want that traditional curriculum. Then this might be something to look into. Also, you would love your child to be exposed to those great works from a young age. That is a huge aspect to classical curriculum. It is fantastic. I think it's a great, I think exposure is the key to in so many things. So if you're interested in that, you're comfortable working with those texts, this might be the way to go. And then you value the critical thinking and teaching critical thinking over um, knowledge of facts and assessing the knowledge of facts. Again, there is no right or wrong here. You have to determine what you as a parent, what your child as a learner, how are they going to interact together best? So traditional is a fantastic method. Classical is a fantastic method. I am going to, in the comments, place a link. I will be sending out little fact sheets about each of these methodologies. If you would like to get an email with those fact sheets, click on that link, put in your email address so that I can get that out to you. And join me back tomorrow to talk about Charlotte Mason, which is the methodology that I implement here in our home. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching. Bye.